Kia ora. Kia ora koutou. I can see a few people have already joined us, and I know a few more will join us. Kia ora koutou. Tēnā koutou katoa. Nau mai, haere mai, piki mai ki tēnei hui. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for this panel discussion on the Poverty Action Plan. Kia ora, ko Marama Davidson tēnei o ngā iwi o Te Rarawa me ngā puhi me Ngāti Porou. I'm Marama, I'm the co-leader for the Green Party. Please, apologies from James Shaw, we're here in Parliament, something urgent came up in the House, in the debating chamber tonight. I've agreed to keep going with our webinar for tonight while James has to be in the House. And I know he's very disappointed that he can't be with us. We're going to have a great night of discussion here regardless. So while we're waiting for a few more of us to join our webinar, feel free to fill in the poll on your screen if it's showing for you to let us know what part of the country that you're calling in from. And just a shout out to the West Coast who might be feeling like you're not included on the poll, but you are definitely a prominent part of our country. So welcome if you're from the West Coast. Also, it asks how many people are watching with you and whether this is your first Green Party Zoom webinar. So I'm just going to quickly start off our hui properly with a karakia for all of us. Kia tau te rangi Māori e, o te rangi e tūnei, o papatua nuku e takoto nei, o te taiao e awhi nei, ki runga i a tātou, tihei mauri ora. May the peace of the sky above, of the earth below, and the world all around rest upon us. Kia ora. So we're here to talk about how to create a better Aotearoa that looks after every single one of us. We're here to talk about the Poverty Action Plan that the Green Party was very proud to announce just on Sunday gone in Glen Innes at the Te Oro Community Centre on Sunday. So what the plan is, it's about making sure that everyone has the support they need when they need it. And it realises and recognises that at some point, most people are going to need support. And we want to make sure it is there when you need it. And to pay for it, the other part of our plan is about sharing and redistributing wealth. And it talks about our wealth tax and 2 higher income taxes as well. So our plan will pay for it through a wealth tax for the richest 6 and 7% of New Zealanders, the wealthiest 6 and 7% of New Zealanders. And that won't make a difference for people who have that wealth, but that money will make a huge difference for people when they need it. And we do that through a guaranteed minimum income. So we talk about a guaranteed minimum income as an income that everyone can rely on. Every working age adult can know that there is an income to rely on no matter what. And that is a $325 minimum income. And then there is more support if you have tamariki, if you are a sole parent, if you have an illness or a sickness or a disability. And so it builds up the different supports that people can get in different times and in different circumstances as well. As I mentioned before, we also create an agency for comprehensive care that would replace the current and transform the current ACC, the current Accident Compensation Corporation. We're clear that people should be able to get the support they need no matter how they arrived at their particular illness or injury or disability, whether it was from an accident or not. People should be able to access some comprehensive support and enough income to live on, regardless. We will pay for that through the wealth tax. So for the 6% people with the most wealth, that is 1% of your wealth, and it is net, so it doesn't include mortgage or debt, and it is only of the wealth that is over $1 million. So the first $1 million is yours, so to speak, and a 2% wealth tax for your wealth that is over $2 million. And so that sits alongside two added tax rates, 37% for any income over $100,000 a year, and 42% for your income over $150,000 per year. And that allows us to be able to make sure that everyone has the support they need when they need it. We've got some incredible panelists tonight, and they're going to talk about the impact of what this would have on people's lives. But I'll now bring some of those panelists on very shortly, but we'll constantly keep going back to the principles that everyone should get the support they need when they need it, and that it's not going to make a huge difference, the wealth tax and the income tax, but that money will be better spent and make a massive difference for people's lives when they need it. And essentially, that is just about setting up Aotearoa for future generations to resolve inequality, which is unsustainable, to make sure we have got cohesive and connected communities that are strong and able to take care of each other. And that's the Aotearoa that we are hoping to achieve with a plan like this that is part of a really good, strong starting point. Okay, I believe I've got some poll results I might have that I'm just going to have a look at here. Oh, so people are zooming in, I should say, or watching in from all around the country, actually. We've got Northland, quite a few from Auckland, some from Waikato Bay of Plenty, some from Central North Island. Also, definitely the Wellington region is another strong showing. We've got top of the south, Kia ora, down in Canterbury, cold there in Otago and Southland, also very cold, and a few from overseas as well. So thank you. And for many of you, let's just see if I can see this properly. For many of you, this is your first time that you are joining the Green Party Zoom. So kia ora, welcome. Okay. Yes, and some of you have already cottoned on to putting some questions in the chat as well. Right, let's get our fabulous panelists on the screen. So I'm going to bring our panelists on one by one. As we bring each panelist in, we'll ask you to introduce yourself and your world, the perspectives, the insights and the experience that you bring to this kōrero tonight, and share with us how the Poverty Action Plan will impact on people's lives and on our country. So please, if I could call you in now, Dr. Huhana Hiki, affectionately known as Dr. Hu, no mai, haere mai.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Marama. Thank you to the Green Party for the invite tonight. My name is Huhana. It's Māori for Susan, basically, and that's just who I am. Dr. Who for short, because I'm a great Whovian fan, and that's my little side that I enjoy is Doctor Who, Star Trek and zombie movies. So just to be out there on the diversity of that. I'm Ngāti Tahinga from the west coast here in the Whaingaroa Harbour between Raglan and Northland, and I'm also whakatuhia. My grandfather was Navajo, my great-grandfather was an Aboriginal tent boxer, my father was Sami, my mother was Māori. So I'm in ngā haue whā, so I'm from the four winds of the earth, as many of us are, and I wish to welcome everyone here today. I wish to also acknowledge our ancestors and those who have recently passed within the last 12 months. My background is around law. I'm a human rights lawyer. I've been a director. I have my own company called Pukinga Consultancy. I write sentencing reports for prisoners And I'm also a jack of all trades, I guess, in some ways. Nursing background, I've done a lot of health research. I have a particular interest in disability, but also a very particular interest in Indigenous rights. I was the Indigenous Peoples Rep for the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and I was able to get some input and understand and meet many, many nations, people who have poverty that we've never seen the like of, but we cannot compare New Zealand's experiences to theirs because it is just far too different. I have a real interest in the issue of poverty and rights, and particularly I was involved on the Welfare Expert Advisory Group. I was one of the members, and Marama, I really acknowledge that what the Green Party have tried to do within this policy is incorporate some of those welfare recommendations. And while they were not fully encompassing of around the disability issue and benefits, there's certainly some more work to be done there. We did all come to an agreement that there needed to be some major reforms. We had a fantastic economist, Ganesh Nana, who's one of the best I've ever met. He's a social economist in that he incorporates the ideology of not just the shareholders and profits, but how do we benefit the entire part of society and bring them up together. And one of those things was actually bringing about the idea of a universal benefit. Now, a lot of people, shun all this, but imagine if we were able to cut some of the bureaucracy of some of those basics around a benefit system. You've got a 16-year-old disabled child. Suddenly we put them on what we used to call the invalid benefit, but now it's known as supported living. Instead of that, they could still go to school and at the age of 16 be able to have some income. As you know, teenagers love money, but also teenage boys eat you out of house and home. So, a little bit of putia is a great start. And then it motivates them to look further rather than always looking around money. In poor households, one of the worst things is you don't have that type of income to be able to give to your teenagers who have needs. So that's one area. But also, if you're in a relationship and you're disabled and you lose your job, you lose income. And relationships is a big barrier around benefits and people who work. These days, there are very few full-time jobs, very few well-paying full-time jobs. The employment market has changed. We have part-time. Some families, they have mum and dad working 4, 5, 6 jobs at a time, and the children suffer as a result. The universal benefit offers at least some baseline to take some of that pressure off. If mum can't work, they've got a little bit of extra money in order to be able to assist while they go through those stages. Everyone has a change of circumstances. COVID has made people realise that. A lot of middle income workers have lost some of their income and they've suddenly been thrust into this welfare system that is frightening. So when you think about that, and if that's your own experience, when we go through this discussion, let's talk about the impact it has on all of us, not just the unemployed, but those who are part-time, parents, students, seniors. Everyone is affected. We can make a difference. I believe this policy, with a little bit of tweaking here and there, could actually run well. But I'll go one step further. I love your idea of that ministry, but I'd like a ministry for disabilities, and you know that. I'm not going to compromise on that now. I believe that for disabled people, we actually need a lot more than just, it's not just about income or medical. It's actually a whole wider thing. But I believe that we can work with that. And if they do get elected in with the Labour Party, a coalition of these two could actually start making the transformations that they began getting research into at the beginning. So I'll stop it there and allow the others their voice, and thank you.
Beautiful. No, thank you. I fully support having a ministry for disability issues. I think it could work fabulously alongside all of the other ministries, actually, not just the Agency for Comprehensive Care. Thank you, Hannah, for talking about the importance of independence. I'm really proud that in the Poverty Action Plan, we have individualised this minimum income. It recognises that people want to feel independent regardless of what status their partner is, regardless of whether their partner is in paid employment. And I'm really proud that in this plan, we have made sure that whether you are in a relationship or not, you are guaranteed that minimum income, but also for people say sickness, illness, disability, the income and the higher rate of it too, it's higher than $325, needs to apply again regardless of relationship. We've heard forever how much of a hamper, how much of a barrier that has been for people to be able to just live their lives as they want to, plan their lives as they want to, be able to be a part of their communities as they want to, by being kept on really low income rates and by being discouraged because of what their partner is or not doing. So really thank you for raising that from the get-go. That for me is one of the most important parts of this plan. I quickly, before I bring our next fabulous panelists on, wanted to pick up on a couple of points in the chat. And you know, my organisers of this webinar, they told me I'm not allowed to look at the chat, but I did see one particular point that I think is important. So remember, I'm saying with the wealth tax, the first $1 million is free. So the wealth tax on $1 million house is not $10,000. The wealth tax on exactly a $1 million house is nothing. And then if you have got a $1.1 million house and it's freehold, don't forget, and it's also per individual. So if a couple own a $1 million house, that might be 500,000 K each in individual wealth. That also doesn't get touched. And then if it's 1.1, so 1 million plus 100,000, the tax is only on the 100,000, which is $1,000 a year. So not $10,000 a year. So I'll keep repeating that the wealth tax, the first $1 million doesn't apply. And then for 2 million, the 2% rate doesn't apply until it's wealth over and above the $2 million. So I'll keep making that clear if that keeps coming up. That's the policy document stipulates that as well, but I realise that it's a common mistake that people are reading, so I will continue to make that very clear. Okay, I would like to now invite Janet McAllister to turn your video and unmute yourself, and please join us and go ahead and share your introduction with us. Kia ora, Janet, welcome.
Kia ora, Marama. Kia ora koutou. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Thank you for having me tonight. It is a privilege to speak alongside such expert and committed agents for change. I noho ahau ki te tau maru o Puki Tāpapa I toku tamarikitanga. I'm Pākehā and I grew up in Mount Roskill in Tāmaki Makaurau, where I had a safe and happy, secure childhood. I'm here tonight representing Child Poverty Action Group, or CPAG, and we have a vision that Aotearoa New Zealand will be somewhere where all children can flourish. That is, where all children can have a safe and secure childhood, where their well-being is a core priority for their whānau, their community, their nation, and their state. Currently, that is not the case. The country does not have child well-being as its priority, no matter how many beautiful documents are written. And Exhibit A is our income support system, which has acted for many successive governments now as a state instrument of shame and humiliation. It consigns some of our most vulnerable to poverty and then blames them for their own ever increasing debt. So a friend said to me just yesterday that her sister, who brought up 3 children on her own while suffering from a chronic disease, think of all the creativity wasted, the creative energy wasted on trying to alleviate the anguish of not having enough. And that's even before we talk about the shame of having to ask people, having to go to the food bank, having to have the crumbs of charity for things that should be ours as of right. It's adequate incomes. It's incomes to ensure our basic needs and social participation. That should be our birthright, basically. So anyway, CPAG. So I will speak tonight about the incomes of families and whānau with children. And CPAG's modelling indicates that in order to allow families receiving benefits to come out of poverty, we as a country need to lift their core entitlements, their incomes, by about 15 to 20%. And our modelling also tells us that this is basically what the Greens Poverty Action Plan does. So it is a step change, and it is a step change that is necessary. The reason the step is so large in terms of resourcing is because our income support has been so miserable, keeping people's heads under the poverty line for decades. I was reminded today that we have a consensus in this country about what indicators should be used for income poverty. So all MPs, bar one, no prizes for guessing who that one was, but all MPs pretty much voted for our official child poverty indicators. In order to ensure that poverty is reduced, we need a step change like the one in this plan. So the spend plan for whānau with children is sensible. As a policy boffin, it looks to me like this policy was carefully thought out and designed with the goal of getting families out of poverty in mind, as opposed to finding out what we've started with. So, for example, there's a reason why sole parent support would be raised to $435 a week. It's not a number just plucked out of the air, but it works well with the increases to family tax credits being suggested to get families paying relatively low rent over the poverty line. In addition, CPAG would be so delighted to see that that this plan gets rid of the discrimination of our current family tax credit system. So currently, we've got $72 a week withheld from those low-income families who do not have access to paid work. So if you lose your low to medium income job, your children also lose some of their government support at the moment, which is just utterly appalling. It's exacerbating poverty. So removing this discrimination would be fantastic from a rights point of view. And it's also a very cost-effective way of reducing poverty for tamariki, because the new money only goes to those not currently in paid work. So to put my pointy head boffin on for a moment, there wouldn't be any knock-on effects up the income scale in terms of abatements. So finally, ending poverty is the goal. That is the key priority. I doubt there are any New Zealanders who are like, yes, we should be keeping children in poverty. Currently, we do. As a society, we have scooped billions of dollars from our poorest people. How we get there can be discussed, and that's for other people to talk about. I'm talking about the fact that this is the spend that is necessary. I also have a large amount of hope. My boomer dad, who is on the right of the political spectrum, saw that I was on television the other day talking about this, talking about how benefits needed to be raised. I expected him to be like, proud of his little girl, but, don't like what you said, Janet. And he totally agreed with me that benefits need to be raised. Now, I was surprised, maybe we shouldn't be anymore, but I do think there is consensus that something big needs to happen. And I like that this is a plan that could happen. So congratulations to the Greens, and we very much look forward to similar comprehensive and well thought through plans coming from the other parties as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Janet. Thank you so much, especially for raising the fact that this plan removes that long-standing immoral discrimination, which gave less money to some tamariki, which in our minds goes completely against what our country stands for. Thank you also for raising the constant stress involved in barely being able to make ends meet. That's a stress which has flow-on effects into all sorts of other issues, which we all know about. It's a stress which makes it harrowing for anybody to be able to see hope and be able to feel like they're in control and able to plan and aspire to a whole range of things that aren't just putting kai on the table every single day. So thank you for bringing it right back to that. That's exactly the point of this. That's the heart of what we are trying to address, and the fact that there is no need for that. It is unnecessary. We actually have enough. We have enough for no one family, no one person to have to live with that constant stress. So thank you, kia ora, Janet, and kia ora to the work of CPAG. That brings me to our third and final incredible guest to join our incredible panelists. Kia ora, welcome, Andrea Black. Please go ahead, go for it.
Oh, kia ora, Marama, kia ora, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. I'm currently the economist for the Council of Trade Unions, and before that I was the independent advisor for the tax working group, and before that policy coordinator for Just Speak, criminal justice. So I kind of understand all ends of the wealth or inequality spectrum. Now, coming here in the capacity of the CTU economist, and there were three things we'd like to raise that that are kind of relevant here for the work that you are doing. The first thing is really important to remember that it's quite a porous boundary between the idea of worker or beneficiary. Even in like February, when we had so-called full employment, that was actually 4%, and that was 111,000 people who didn't have any paid work. So unemployment, even when times are good, is structural. And so it's vital that we're looking after everyone. The second thing is that since about the 90s, and a number of you have mentioned it, low and middle income households have needed 2 incomes to get by. So particularly in a world with COVID, if one person is losing their job or goes out of paid work, they can't, unless their partner's earning less than the minimum wage, they can't access the benefit system. So it's really vital that we look at some form of individualisation in our system, because it's structural. We've got structural unemployment, and we've got a structural need for 2 incomes in a household. The second thing is that the CTU is very big or keen on the fact that everybody who is in paid work can receive a wage and an income that's livable, and that they can have a decent life. And our policy is that the minimum wage should be 2/3 of the average wage. Now, I think you guys are getting close to it, but I would hope that you could consider that when you're actually fully designing your policies. And the third thing, which is CTU, and that's me personally, and also my work on the tax working group, is it's really important to have a fair tax system. Now, I know that seems trite, but it's important that not just everyone who's a worker or a beneficiary or anyone who's in the PAYE system is paying tax on every dollar they have. One of probably the key insight that I got from the tax working group was that we didn't have a progressive tax system when you factored all the tax. And higher up the income scale, not huge. And then if you were to factor in capital gains, it becomes almost flat. So it's really important that we not only have a fair tax system, we also need a progressive one. Now, what we need to be doing, and this was the tax working group itself, that we aren't taxing capital in the same way that we're taxing labour. And particularly it was capital gains on land. Now, the tax working group said a realised capital gains tax, but that's been discounted. There are other ways of bringing in that fairness. Wealth tax is one, land tax is another. I think CPAG has proposed a tax on net equity. It gets a bit on residential property. I mean, they all have strengths and weaknesses, and they're all options. But we do need to do something to have a fairer tax system to make sure that not only people who have easy income are the ones who are paying tax.
Kia ora. Thank you so much for both your stunning grasp of the detail and where we need to go, and also the challenges of where we can go further. Andrea, it's going to be really important that everyone is engaged with this discussion to help the Greens understand what would make our plan even better and even stronger. Can I pick up on the fair tax? Even though we have introduced 2 new income tax bands in this plan, we still acknowledge that, for example, Australia and the UK have still have a higher top tax rate, for example, and that we really do. We have not in this country taxed capital gains, taxed asset gain, and we have, on the other hand, taxed every single worker, including the lowest paid and the lowest income workers. And that has actually helped to sustain the inequality. It has helped to keep the gap the same or growing wider and wider. So I think there is definitely more conversation. I hope this plan can start to turn our collective vision more towards being able to think of more progressive tax, and particularly land, wealth, capital and assets, which have meant that families and children and many people have been put and kept in poverty, in struggle, while a few have more than they will ever need. It is unsustainable. It also disconnects us from each other as communities and as realities. And so thank you very much. I also wanted to pick up on, and I think I've seen it in the chat as well, the ability to, if you are able to work part-time as part of moving back into paid employment. And I just quickly want to acknowledge paid employment is not the only work that contributes to our community. I'll just make that very clear. There's always been a whole lot of unpaid work that is the backbone of our communities. I mean, you can be as simple as breastfeeding our babies, for example, which doesn't get counted on any spreadsheet. And I acknowledge Marilyn Waring's work in putting that thought centre in my work as well. So I acknowledge that unpaid work has always been a massive contribution to our neighbourhoods and our families. And if people are able to have some paid employment, they should be able to transition into that, be able to set up the supports for their lives, to be able to do that without losing that guaranteed income in a way which makes it hard to even think about going into part-time work. So this would actually improve your chances of planning and thinking about getting some part-time work, or part-time work being the way that you can lead a high quality life while also spending some time at home with whoever it is that you want to spend time at home with, whether it's children or elderly people or your partner, your family. The barriers at the moment to paid employment are poverty. That is actually what is making it difficult for people to even think about. And many people want to, many mums that I've spoken to lining up at work and income in my community in Manurewa for food, which believe me, no country should have to do, especially not ours, who are saying to me, we would love to be in part-time employment. We would love to feel that we are in the workforce, but it's simply not viable because we just lose too much of our basic income. What we have done in this plan is we have increased the amount that you can hold on to of your guaranteed minimum income. You can hold on to more of that as you move into part-time working hours. And as your guaranteed minimum income does start to go down, so for example, you could keep your $325 guaranteed minimum income and earn up to $165 before that guaranteed minimum income would start to decrease. And when it does start to decrease, we have reduced the rate at which it decreases. That is also the same, and I think this is picking up on some of your points, Andrea, around relationships, and as well yours, Janet. If you have a partner in paid employment, that partner can earn up to $756 before your guaranteed minimum income will start to decrease. So what we're really looking at here is really allowing people to plan, to work out what is best for their long-term lives and planning, without feeling pressure to take shitty job after shitty job at low pay and terrible conditions. That actually people can choose. Perhaps it's training, perhaps it's further education, perhaps it's a course, to be able to choose how to set your life up for long-term good and for your family and your community. Oh gosh, things have gotten away with me here because all of our panelists have just kept raising and triggering really important points. So I've got a question which I think I'm going to go to now. Let me just. While I'm doing that, there was a couple more things which I will actually ask if our panelists want to contribute. I talked about relationships. Also as a sole parent, what we've realised is, why should it just be wealthy people who can even think about going on a date or starting a relationship before you start feeling hammered by losing some of your income that you rely on to live? We've always felt that that is a completely inappropriate moral judgment for the government to make. And so we want people to be able to hold on to their income including while they are establishing and having a relationship. So that may change from your initial status as being a sole parent, but going on a date absolutely should not mean cancelling your income. But in fact, we would like to see a fair amount of time before people's incomes have to be adjusted at all, because otherwise we are making some really moral judgments that I don't think the state should be making. So, okay, I've got a question. Hi, Marama and team. Could you please clarify where someone like me would stand? I am a 51-year-old with cancer. I have been unable to work for 3 years, and due to my illness and treatment. Currently, I get no benefit, as my husband, who I married 2 months before my diagnosis, is expected to support me. He is on a pension or superannuation. I have purchased health insurance, which covers some but not all of my treatment. The rest of it and all my travel, and this person lives in a rural area, I have to fund myself. I honestly feel like a non-person of no value to society. Kia ora, I'm ashamed that anyone has to feel like that. And firstly, I'm going to ask if any of our panelists would like to talk a little bit more on that question. Please, Dr. Hu, go ahead.
Kia ora anō. That's actually a very common question that a lot of people had for us in the welfare group. And the reality is, under the current system and under the current financial barriers existing with Pharmac, with a whole bunch of other medical interventions or access to medicine and treatments, along with losing income, going into relationships and losing benefits because you go into that, it just puts so many people that are unwell or who are disabled into that status of poverty. The only way we can actually break that is that we remove the barriers around relationships so that you have your benefit or your income for yourself. The only other thing we can do is we've got to remove the barriers around Pharmac and its limitations around funding certain drugs, because a lot of people experiencing cancer, and I noticed Elisa earlier on had a comment around that, the drugs are getting so expensive. I'm on a medication and it's medicinal cannabis and it's legal. I've been on it for 4 years and I pay $1,500 a month. Now, when I'm working, it's hard enough. I mean, great, I was earning good money when I work, but it's when I don't work and I get sick again, which is the nature of having a disability or an illness, that's when I can't afford it. And the cost wears you down. So I do understand that. All I can say is we've got to get transformative. We've got to get brave. The only way we can do that is we strategically look at who we vote to have in. We can't have just one party. Under MMP, we have a coalition. Now, it doesn't mean minor major party. It means who do you think align with the right values to make sure we can push across the line the policies we need to benefit our communities? Disability is defined as being 6 months or more living with a condition. The issue of illness is not that different, only under our current system, you go under a job seeker sickness, which used to be the sickness benefit. Under the new system that was recommended under WEAG, we put away all of that. And you get a universal benefit or you get a bottom line. Relationships don't define what you have and what you need, and that would be a lot fairer for you. But we also need to look at transforming our health system, our other systems to come into alignment with that. I really hope that we can get this done so that you have that opportunity. Thank you.
Kia ora, Dr. Hu. Andrea or Janet, let me know if you would like to add anything further to that particular situation. That's fine. Otherwise, we recognise that this is a long-term heartache for thousands and thousands of people and for many, many generations. It needs fixing urgently, and our plan, which is why our plan makes sure that people are not penalised because of their partner or having a partner or because of what their partner is earning. So thank you very much for bringing that question to us. I've got a couple of other questions. Actually, Janet, you've gone into this a little bit already, but I think it's worth talking about again and again, and any of our panelists. But so the question starter, guaranteeing a minimum income of at least $325 plus the extra top-ups that are in our plan, like the $120 for sole parent, $100, $190 for the first child, and $120 per week for subsequent children, as well as $110 for sole parents. So starting with you, Janet, guaranteeing a minimum income of at least $325 will lift financial stress by. What would you like to say to that one? Or just how will it lift financial stress?
One of the things that I think is worth talking about is debt and high interest debt, and how if you don't have enough by, let's say, $30 a week, then that accumulates, and you can be turned away from all your kind of usual lenders, and then you go to a fringe lender, and then that's it. It's very, very difficult to get out of that hole. And that could be, your budget is $30 lower than it needs to be, and that's not even $60 or $90. A few dollars can make a big difference in terms of what happens with that debt. So I think that would be. I mean, I am concerned that a lot of money at the lower end of our income scale goes to fringe lenders for high interest, and it goes out of people's pockets immediately. So I think having adequate incomes means that it's way more efficient on a society-wide level. So yeah, that's kind of like the systems view. I'd also just take this opportunity to point out that poverty is not a natural thing. It is something that we as a society have established and maintain, and we can stop maintaining that. But the others may be able to talk more about kind of individual experiences. Kia ora.
Thank you, Janet. Please, Andrea or Dr. Who, let me know if you'd like to add your voices to that. And Kate Pai, because I've got one here that I actually might start off with you, Andrea. Andrea, do you think it's a good idea to raise taxes in the middle of a recession? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, okay. I think it depends on how they're raised. I think things like increasing GST is a bad idea. I think, okay, it's kind of how it's raised. I'm all in favour of closing loopholes, which, to be fair, will need to be done if you're extending the top tax rate further than the company tax rate. I think that's a good idea, and I think that's going to need to happen. I think so long as it's targeted at the people who have the most, I don't get too upset, because I mean, one argument is that you would be taking tax money that people would otherwise be spending in the economy, so that wouldn't be a good idea. But if it's targeted at the people who really have the most and who would perhaps otherwise save the money, I'm not sure it's the end of the world.
Go ahead, Janet.
Just from a personal point of view, I have a number of friends who are like down on 80% income or have lost their jobs. And as somebody who has not have to do that, I'm like, tax me. This is, it's actually fairer to raise taxes for, as Andrea says, those of us who can afford it, given that there are people hurting. And as the team of 5 million, why don't we just kind of level it up rather than stretch that inequality that we have seen happening, which is very disappointing since COVID hit.
Thank you very much. I'm cutting in between here. I think this one has come up enough in the chat, which again, I'm not supposed to be looking at to answer, which is tax avoidance. So first thing, our plan absolutely applies to trusts as well. And so the similar rates apply to trusts, remembering too, it is individual wealth. So Māori land trusts and whenua Māori land trusts are exempt. And that is because of a number of reasons. One is because that is not where the wealth is held and made in this country. 2 is because it was stolen land that is being returned at only 1% of the rate it was stolen at. And so we've rightfully exempted Māori land. Other sorts of trusts are included in the wealth, and so it's not as simple as just wealth being put into trusts to hide. It doesn't avoid the wealth tax. It still attracts the wealth tax at the similar rates. There's some detailed bits about differences between different types of trusts, but I think it's just important to know that trusts also attract the wealth tax. On the issue of avoidance, yes, every single tax system around the world is always open to people trying to get away with hiding lots of wealth. And we're very, very aware of that and want to continue to tighten up loopholes, hear from experts and do further work. The work that we've done so far in our plan, we believe hopes to avoid and discourage that as much as possible, but we're always open and up to doing further work to make sure that we are sharing, make sure that people are paying what they need to help our country as a whole survive and thrive, and sort of move away from looking after self and understanding that it's in all our interests to care for each other, to look after each other. So that's one of the sort of issues that I wanted to pick up in tonight's question, and I've got some more here. This one is an interesting one. I know I'm going around the panelists, so I might come back to you, Huhana, Dr. Hu. We've got a person saying, when you say illness, will this also cover mental illness? And Dr. Hu, I wondered if you could share a perspective on all illness. Thank you. Go for it.
Thank you. Well, the United Nations defines disability as any condition that is life-altering that affects you for 6 months or more. Now, mental health has always been kind of siloed to that side, and I've had a mental health condition. And I can only speak from, like, I know academically the definitions, and I know that Western culture has a tendency to kind of compartmentalise mental health here, senior care here, accident-related here, medical here. I don't. The social model, which is the model that brings in the New Zealand Disability Strategy, talks of the environment being the issue, not us, but also we self-define. I have mental health conditions. I live with depression. I've lived with it since I can remember. I was about 11. And I've had to keep that well. But people see my wheelchair, so they avoid my mental health issues because they don't see it. So they assume that we don't have it. I'm also ADHD, in case people haven't worked that out by now. It doesn't take long to work out my brain goes in 10 different conversations at the same time. But, that's under the DSM. And I have autistic grandchildren and nephews and nieces, and all these conditions, to us it doesn't matter if you're Māori or if you're Indigenous. What I've found in my research is Indigenous peoples don't silo out disability. We see ourselves, why I use the term whānau hawa, simply means I'm a family member first and foremost. My name is Huhana, my name is not MS. My name is Hu, or Dr. Hu, or Huhana, who I say I am. My conditions are as I define them, and I need assistance. So then I go out and seek that through the different options available. To me, illness is something that's often temporary, so it's slightly different. But for some, the illness may go into a disability as it progresses. So chronic fatigue, for instance, or if your cancer doesn't come into remission, you then end up in that disability framework, or the impairments that you acquire become permanent. So to me, it's all the same. We are illness, disability, chronic conditions are all very much one and the same, but we have different ways of presenting. So in other words, I'm not blind, but I have glaucoma. I'm not deaf, but I have hearing aids. I'm physically disabled. However, I also have a mental health condition, but it's not seen. So, we are all these things. And I guess it comes down to the complexity of being a human being. The difference is that my life as a human being is hampered by society's attitudes around disability and its inability to make things accessible to me. So that's how I interpret it, and I would like to see a more formal way of accepting that within our government and our entities that provide care and services to us.
Thank you. Gosh, I knew you were the right person to help me navigate that story of well-being, holistic well-being. And our vision is that our agency for comprehensive care would be prioritising what people's needs are for their holistic health, as opposed to what it currently is, which is interrogative, complex, punitive or punishing, and does not invite people to simply just expect to receive the support they need when they need it. So thank you for helping us to sum up that vision of what truly focused care agency might look like. Kia ora, Dr. Hu. I've got a few quick points, and then I'm going to, and that's just from the questions I'm seeing, and then I'm going to come back to our panelists for some final thoughts on absolutely anything as we start to wrap up. I would just like to let everyone in the chat know that all of your points yes, students are included in this policy. This policy would essentially replace student allowances. I'd like to let everybody know that all of your points will be recorded for us. We will continue to go through them and include them in our thinking and our further development on this poverty action plan. A few key points. Housing. Absolutely. So firstly, watch this space. Secondly, yes, we understand that. Well, so firstly, we are aiming to keep the current accommodation supplement exactly as it is. There are issues to be fixed in housing, and it is about making sure that public, affordable, warm, healthy homes are available for everyone who needs one, and we need to bring the housing costs down to a level that people can afford. So watch this space for that. Work needs to absolutely sit alongside this so that people aren't just funneling extra income into increased rents and so on and so forth. So thank you for raising that. Secondly, yes, I've seen people asking for graphics to be able to simply explain what people get and what people are taxed and redistribution of wealth. Yes, I think that's a great idea, and our team will be picking that up. And thirdly, asset rich and cash poor, or say you've got, for example, an older superannuation couple, they have a freehold home that might be just over $1 million, but they're on superannuation. You can defer your payments, perhaps until the house is sold. So we realise that this isn't, again, the principle here is that everyone will get the support they need when they need it through a guaranteed minimum income, that it will be paid for by the people with the most wealth, for whom it will not make a big impact. That this plan on those people with enough and with more than enough, it will not make a big impact, but it will make a huge difference for the people who require that support at that time. And so remember, it is not inclusive of debt. So for farms, for example, we know a lot of farms are actually owing a lot of debt. It does not include debt. It is only what you own freehold. And for low income, then you are able to defer, and that would also apply to businesses as well. So asset or wealth high, but low income, you are able to defer. Yes, it does apply to farmers. And remember, the principle is the wealth that is over and above $1 million. And if it is over and above $1 million of freehold wealth, then we are in the luckiest only 6% of our country, and we are able to pay our love back to our community. So now I'm going to come, this time I'm going to go to you, Janet, and then to you, Andrea, and then to you, Dr. Hu. Go ahead, Janet, for some final thoughts.
Kia ora. I'll pick up on your point about, I think Shamabil Yaqub said it about 3 years ago, that tax is love. And so that will also feed into the Welfare Expert Advisory Group's wider concept of whakamana tangata. So we need to decolonise the whole system so that it is equitable and so that it raises the mana of the people. So it's mana ki tanga. And this will help us all be on a good level in order to reach our full potential, in order to look after one another, in order to have full and satisfying lives, which is what we all want everybody in this country to have. So kia ora.
I think I said over to you, Andrea. Go ahead. Kia ora, Jack.
For far too long, we have had or do have a two-tier country. Haves and have-nots is just the sort of trite way of saying it, and increasingly with rising house prices and such like, and even in a COVID recession, we've got a share market that's booming. It's important that we find ways to sort of level the inequality in this country. Otherwise, as we've seen in history, things will be leveled, but not necessarily in a way that you might like. So I really commend the Green Party for the work that they're doing in attempting to address the inequality and address the problems that we have in this country, so that everyone in New Zealand can have a decent, fair, comfortable life, not just those who've been lucky enough to have been born with parents who have houses or just bought their house at the right time. So mihi to you all.
Kia ora, Andrea. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Who.
Kia ora koutou. I'd like to begin with the theme that we had from the Welfare Expert Advisory Group. When we went around the country, we recognised that people were actually in a lot of roles that weren't recognised, paid or valued. So our theme was around studying, working, caring or volunteering. A lot of carers are unpaid. Many of them, not everyone goes into an old folks home or goes into residential care. And a lot of partners, parents give up their lives for their children or for their partners that are disabled or unwell during a period of time, and it needs to be recognised. An individualised universal benefit would actually help to make that happen for those that find themselves in that situation, and any of us do at any time. But I guess I want to say that when I work, I earn good money because of my PhD and that, and I'm very fortunate. I don't often get work, but when I do and I earn it and we've got pūtea in our pocket, the first thing we do is we go down along to Auckland Queen Street. I find my homeless guys and girls. I find the homeless youth and I feed them. My partner and I, we have backpacks for the homeless when we can afford it. We try and source clothing, medicines, materials, even sanitary pads, razors, give them some dignity, and we put a treat in each time. There is no hook to any of that. We just give it with love. And we do it because I've been there. I know what it's like to be on the streets years ago. I have seen so many of our youth that can no longer get into cheap housing, corner themselves, huddle up like little kittens outside Queen Street. And they outside McDonald's, actually. It seems to be the little place they know to go. That's housing so that multi-generations can live together, for 100% accessible housing. I didn't get to see the access plan implemented. However, that is what it is. But I won't stop pushing for it because I'm lippy. But, the point I want to make is, this isn't the New Zealand I grew up knowing. When I grew up in the 60s and 70s, we cared more. Working people lived in state housing. Working people had a house attached to their job. And we had a more egalitarian society. In the 1980s, they took that away from us, and many of us sort of slipped through the cracks. Many did. But the few that benefited kept benefiting. If I'm earning, I will give back to society. I know under lockdown 4, many of us became a team of 5 million. We can retain that and be that unique leader in the world that we currently are by the fact that we get brave, transform, and don't be afraid to make these decisions that will benefit the bulk of us, if not all of us, more, rather than not benefit us. Disparity and deficit does not need to exist any longer in our country. We have an opportunity and we can do it now.
Yes. Standing ovation to all of our panelists tonight, Janet McAllister, Andrea Black, Dr. Huhana Hiki, for sharing so generously your expertise, your dreams, your inspirations, and your role modelling for how we're going to have to all continue to work together. wherever we are in our community, whatever role we are in, whatever stage we are in our lives, working together is how we are going to change this and fix this. And I feel really inspired by that vision. Right now is the biggest opportunity that I think we've ever had in a long time, that we've just come through COVID-19, where we have seen how important it is for us to have a strong safety net. And when we have seen that when political governments want to do things, we can. So it's political will, and we gratefully accept all the mandate we possibly can to help us get this change together. That we commit to hearing your voices and your stories, to making sure that we are making our policies and our plans better and better and better, to staying bold and visionary and transformational in what we want to be able to be offering to our communities to get on board, so we can all help our country be what she deserves to be. So, kia ora koutou katoa. I am going to finish us off with a karakia for the night. Thank you to our people who came and left conversations with us in the chat and asked questions. We've got them all. We'll record them. We'll keep looking through the issues that you're all raising, which are fantastic questions, by the way. Thank you all very much. Let's keep going. Let's keep joining together, working together, pushing through. We really, really can fix this. Kia ora koutou katoa. Our closing karakia. Tūtawa mai I runga, tūtawa mai I raro, tūtawa mai I roto, tūtawa mai I waho. Kia tau wai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumie, huie, taiki e. Come forth from above, come forth from below, come forth from within and from the environment. Vitality and well-being for all, strengthened in unity. Kia ora koutou, thank you all for coming. Thank you to our panellists. For Mārie, please have a good rest of the night. Stay safe. I hope everyone is warm. Kia ora koutou.